Dear parents, thank you for taking time to join us here at Unity Connects. The science curriculum seeks to nurture the students as an inquirer. The starting point is that children are curious and want to explore the things around them. The science curriculum leverages on and seeks to fuel this spirit of curiosity. At the end of the day, we want our students to enjoy science, value science as an important tool in helping them explore their natural and physical world, and be a stronger problem solver in their daily life. Through this workshop, parents, you will learn the strategies science teachers use in the classroom to teach answering of open-ended questions. Using questions from the various topics, science teacher will share the use of concept, connection, conclusion, the C3 answering technique to help students respond to such questions. In addition, the marking annotations used by teachers to mark the explained question will be shared to help you support your child in his or her inquiry journey. Let's start by understanding the open-ended question answering techniques. There are different types of questions in the open-ended section. Some can be answered using only one word, while others may require several sentences. You need to know how much detail to give in your answer. Writing more than what is required wastes precious time, while writing too little causes you to lose precious marks. Your child has been taught to pick up words in the question that indicate how they should be answered. For describe type of question, students are required to give relevant details about an object or event, but not required to explain their answer. For explain type questions, they are required to give reasons or making something clear and simple to understand, and we will make use of the C3 answering technique to do so. State type of question is the easiest and usually requires short answers without explanation. If the question asks for an interpretation of what the experiment tells you, students will need to interpret the results of the experiment. Another possible type of question will be asking for what would happen. In other words, we are asking the students to make a prediction. Again, no explanation will be required. Allow me to share with you some examples. This is a describe type of question. A farmer wants to find out if chicks will grow faster by eating corn or rice. Describe how he should carry out the experiment. The answer will be to write down the steps for the experiment as shown in the slides. No explanation is required in this answer. Here's another example of a question involving description. Karen pushed an inverted empty plastic cup in a container of water as shown in the diagram below. While the cup was in the water, Karen pierced a hole at the base of the cup. Describe what she will observe after that. To answer this question, students would simply describe that air bubbles will be seen coming out of the hole as water filled the cup. There is no need to explain why the bubbles are escaping from the hole. Next, this is a state type of question, which is the easiest type of questions that involve short answers. State the conditions necessary for germination. Students simply need to state down the conditions, which are the presence of water, oxygen, and warmth. Let's read the next type of question. What does this activity tell us? If object X is connected to the circuit and the bulb lights up, we can conclude that object X is a conductor of electricity. Again, explanation is not needed for this question. For questions that requires explanation, students will then have to make use of the C3 answering techniques, which stands for concept, connection, and conclusion. Under concept, students will recall what themes or topic the question is testing on. What concepts are being applied here? Students will then have to apply this concept to the questions by stating the evidence that relates to the concept from the diagram, tables, or graphs. What are the comparison made in the questions or the setups of the experiment. Students will then wrap up their answer by concluding the outcome or what happened as a result in the end. To put it simply, we state the concept being tested in the question, we use evidence from the question, and state a conclusion. In the next few slides, we will be sharing with you more examples of explanation questions and how your child can make use of his teacher's marking annotations to help himself or herself improve his or her answer.
These are the marking symbols used in science. For spelling mistake, the teacher will underline the word and put a bracket. For missing C1, C2, or C3, the teacher will put a caret to indicate where the missing component should be inserted. The teacher will then mark C1, C2, or C3 with a question mark and a cross at the end to indicate an incomplete answer. For wrong C1, C2, or C3, the teacher will underline what is wrong and mark C1, C2, or C3 with a cross. And lastly, for an irrelevant answer, the teacher will mark the entire answer with a cross. For P5, these are the Term 2 topics: cells, reproduction in plants, and reproduction in humans. The questions that we will be looking at today will be related to these topics. This is example 1, a question from the PSLE booklet B on the topic of reproduction in plants. Diagram 1 shows a process R that takes place in the life cycle of a coconut plant. Part A, name process R. Here, the question is asking our students to name process R. Hence, the question is only testing on the concept. The student answered pollination. However, this will be marked wrong because process R is not pollination. The correct answer is germination. For part B, state all the conditions needed for process R to take place. The word state means that only the concept is needed. The student's answer is the presence of water and oxygen. However, there is a missing condition here. The caret will be indicated, followed by a cross. The answer should be the presence of water, oxygen, and warmth. The mnemonic that the student can use here will be wow. Let's take a look at part C of the question. Diagram 2 below shows some parts of a coconut fruit. The seed coat surrounds a fleshy solid pea. Solid P serves an important function in process R. Explain why this function is important before structure J, as shown in diagram 1, develops. The student has written that solid P provides food for the plant as there are no leaves. Looking at this answer, the concept of plants making its own food and needing food is missing. The connection to the question is incomplete. That is our C2. The conclusion is also missing here. This will be marked as wrong. Another student's answer is shown. The concept of leaves making food is incomplete, as there's no mention of plants needing food to survive. The connection and the conclusion are missing. This will be marked with a cross. The answer is, for the concept, plants need leaves to make food, as plants are living things and need food to survive. For the connection, solid P serves as a food source for the young plant to grow before the young plant can make its own food using structure J. To conclude, so germination can take place. Part 2. Explain how a characteristic of the coconut fruit, as shown in diagram 2, helps in its dispersal. The student's answer is, the empty space makes the coconut fruit lighter so it can float and be dispersed by water. This is a wrong concept, so a cross is given for the entire answer. Another response we have here is, The fibrous husk can help the coconut to float on water. The concept of the fibrous husk is written. The connection to the question is incomplete because how does the fibrous husk then help the coconut to float on water? The conclusion of floating on water is written. Thus, C1 and C3 is shown, but C2 is incomplete. The answer is the coconut fruit has a fibrous husk. Connect and give evidence that is, it can trap air, which allows the coconut fruit to float on water and be carried by moving water away from the parent tree. So, the coconut fruit is dispersed by water. That will be the conclusion. We will move on to example 2, a question on the reproduction in plants. This question is from the PSLE 2018 Booklet B. Let's read the question together. A farmer grew some young plants far apart from one another to prevent overcrowding. Explain why growing far apart from one another benefits the plants. The student's answer is to prevent overcrowding. Now, the student is simply copying the question at the top. Young plants far apart from one another to prevent overcrowding. The concept of plants needing sufficient sunlight, water, gases and nutrients is missing. The connection to the question is not elaborated. We also encourage our students to use the word avoid instead of to prevent overcrowding. Another response is to avoid overcrowding and reduces competition. The concept of plants needing sufficient sunlight, water, nutrients and gases is missing. The connection to the question is still incomplete. As what is the evidence when the plants are avoiding overcrowding and reducing competition? The answer is plants need to absorb sufficient sunlight, water, nutrients and gases for healthy growth. Plants that grow far apart avoids overcrowding and reduces competition with one another for sunlight and water necessary for their healthy growth. C3. So it benefits the plants. Our next example is a combination of 3 topics: cells, reproduction in humans, and reproduction in plants. This is a PSLE 2017 question from Booklet B. The diagram shows cells during a process H in the reproduction of an animal. The knowledge of reproduction in humans is required. The knowledge of cells in the reproduction of humans is also required. A. Part C controls all activities of the cell. Name Part C. The question is asking our students for the naming of the part. Therefore, Part C is the nucleus. This is correct. B. Process H also occurs in plant P. The diagram shows how a fruit is formed from the flower of plant P. The fruit of plant P has been cut open. We have a flower undergoing process G, then process H to become a fruit. Describe process G. When the description of a process is needed, it is testing on the student's concept of what the process is about. The student's answer is, process G is pollination, which is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. This is correct as the flower needs to undergo pollination first before fertilization. There is also a similarity between the reproduction in plants and the reproduction in humans. Process H, which is fertilization, takes place in the reproduction of an animal too. State the part of the flower that J developed from. Looking at the diagram, structure J refers to the seeds. We know that the fruit develops from the ovary and the seeds develop from the ovules. The student has answered correctly here. In a population of plant K, each plant has only red flowers or only white flowers. A farmer collected seeds from plant K with red flowers to grow new plants. Explain why the new plants will have only red flowers. The student's answer is, there is characteristic for red flowers in the seed. The student did not mention the concept of the seed containing the genetic information. There is a missing C1 and a cross is given. The answer is, the seeds inherit genetic information from plant K. To connect and give evidence from the question, the seeds collected were from plant K, which bear red flowers. To conclude, the new plants will have only red flowers. This is our last example, a question of reproduction in plants, taken from PSLE 2013 Booklet B. Irene counted the number of two different types of young plants, P and Q, at various distances from their parent plants in a garden. The results are shown below. Firstly, the students would need to study the bar graph. On the vertical axis, it shows the number of young plants. On the horizontal axis, it is the distance of the young plants from the parent plants in meters. The key is shown in the rectangle, where the shaded bar graph refers to young plant P and the unshaded bar graph refers to young plant Q. By analyzing the bar graph, we realize that young plant P is at a nearer distance from the parent plant compared to young plant Q. Looking at the number of young plant P at a distance of 2 meters from the parent plant. Also looking at the distance of 8 meters from the parent plant, we can only find young plant Q there. Which one of the following is likely to be the fruit of plant P? Choose your answer and put a tick in the box. As we discussed, the young plant P is found at a nearer distance from its parent plant compared to young plant Q. Therefore, when we look at the two options given, which are dispersal by wind on the left and dispersal by explosive or splitting action on the right, the fruit of plant P is most likely to be dispersed by splitting action because of the proximity of young plant P from its parent plant compared to young plant Q. The question needs our students to explain their answers to support why the fruit of plant P is more likely to be dispersed by explosive action rather than by wind. The student's answer is, seeds dispersed by explosive action is a short distance. A short distance due to dispersal by explosive action is the correct concept. However, there are two different types of methods of dispersal here. Therefore, we will need to use a comparative word, shorter, instead of short. The connection and evidence from the bar graph is missing. The conclusion of the choice of method of dispersal is missing too. Looking at another response, the student describes that young plant P is near to the parent plant. The student is giving evidence from the bar graph in the answer. This is a connection, C2. However, the word near is used. As shared, a comparative word nearer should be used instead, because there are two different types of methods of dispersal here. Thus, a comparison must be shown. The concept of dispersal by explosive action for seeds dispersed at a shorter distance compared to seeds dispersed by wind traveling a further distance is not mentioned. The conclusion of the choice of method of dispersal is missing too. Another student's answer is that there is a high number of young plant P at distance of 2 meters than young plant Q. However, there is no comparison as the distance of 2 meters does not show how near or how far 2 meters is, although the student did use the evidence given in the question. The comparative words like nearer, shorter, or further is not used. The answer is, the explosive action of the fruit can only disperse the seeds a shorter distance, while the seeds dispersed by wind can travel a further distance. C2, which is the connection and evidence. From the graph, young plant P is scattered nearer to the parent plant as compared to young plant Q. In conclusion, the young plant P is more likely to be scattered by explosive action than by wind. Analyzing the answer, comparative words are used in C1 and C2 to compare whether the distance is nearer, shorter, or further, instead of just stating near, short, or far, as a comparison must be made between the two methods of dispersal. Thank you once again for joining us in this sharing session. We hope this is beneficial in the understanding of the answering techniques for science.